du meine Arbeit für richtig hältst, ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit verwendet habe im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
Well, my friends, you got it in one. The title speaks for itself. This is the time of the rise of female Nazis in American government and in positions of influence. Today, and probably for the first time on social media, podcasting, or in the legacy media, I want to create a discussion about what appears to be the most perplexing and extreme rise in the number of Nazi female adherents to the fantasies, the myths, ideals, and directions of male leaders of fascism in America, women who not only follow and endorse the madness of fascism, but who have surfaced to hold positions of power and influence within its bizarre and cultist structure. Now, the phrase rise of the female fascists can refer to two distinct but related concepts. One, the historical role of women in fascist movements and the contemporary rise of far-right female politicians, influencers, and even the voters. Historically, while fascism is often perceived as a male-dominated ideology, women played significant roles within the fascist organizations and often promoted as the embodiment of fascist ideals of motherhood and national identity were extant. But in the modern era, there has been a noticeable increase in the prominence of women in far-right political movements and leadership positions such as Giorgia Meloni in Italy and Marine Le Pen in France. And they're certainly not alone. So what, if anything, explains this seemingly inexplicable development? What we see here and discuss is, in my view, equally relevant and equivalent to the millions of women who voted for Trump in the last election in what might amount to an expression of female mass psychosis. And so I turn to Wilhelm Reich, writing between 1921 and 1933 at the time of Hitler's takeover of Germany, because he's an important source. And according to Reich, there is much agreement that in his writings on character structure and on the psychology of fascism, especially the latter, were prescient and fundamental to an integrated view of fascism as a specific product of one type of socialization of the child, which produces an authoritarian and rigid character structure. There is also general agreement among scholars as to what the essence of Reich's position was. Fascist ideology is the product of a particular psychological structure which is quite irrational and related to an authoritarian patriarchal family structure. Central to the development of the authoritarian, according to Reich, is the patriarchal family which socializes the child through either severe physical or severe psychological punishments, and worse. This type of attachment to the parents, if it exists, leads to a very weak concept of self. And I'm remembering my psychiatrist friend, Mr. Lang, Dr. Lang, the Scottish psychiatrist, who talked about low self-esteem, lack of concept of self, or ontological security. Anyway, this leads to a high degree of narcissism as a compensatory mechanism. A contemporary example of this is provided by the sister of Donald Trump, Marianne Trump Barry. So, what creates these anti-liberal feminists into what they are? Psychologically deranged, feminist, illiberal personalities. And here we turn to the relationship between a person, a child, with now an authoritarian personality, whatever that might represent, and his or her father. And it's described as one both physical and psychological, containing abuse, possibly sexual abuse as well. And yes, the evidence of this extraordinary rise in female fascists or Nazis is largely anecdotal at the moment, as there is no way, at present, to form an opinion based on statistical analysis that we can't access or source. But the sample of women who have come to prominence and following the first and second presidencies of the psychotic and fascist Donald Trump is represented by the following group, some of whom you saw in the introduction next to their Nazi counterparts. But let me read from the list just to give you an idea of who and what we're dealing with. Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff in the White House, Catholic with an alcoholic father. Caroline Leavitt, Press Secretary, Catholic. In the Cabinet, Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, unknown. Kristi Noem, Secretary, the United States Department of Homeland Security. Linda McMahon, Secretary, U.S. Department of Education, Catholic. Brooke Rollins, Secretary, U.S. Department of Agriculture, unknown. Lori Chavez DeRema, U.S. Department of Labor, raised by her father. And further, we then have Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. Kelly Loeffler, Administrator, Small Business Administration, from a farming background. Monica Crowley, Chief of Protocol, unknown, born on an army base. Alina Habba, Counselor to the President and a Catholic. In the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, Catholic, coming from a very weird and eclectic religious sect, of whom concerns have been raised by some former members of the People of Praise, this Christian community, with which Amy Coney Barrett is associated, about the group's structure and practices. Some former members of People of Praise have described the group's culture as insular and controlling. Additionally, allegations of child abuse within the community and attempts by some leaders to discourage reporting to authorities have surfaced. Then there's Jeanine Pirro, United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, a Maronite Catholic. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, remember her? Father, a Baptist minister. Kellyanne Conway, I'm sure you remember her. Divorce, no father, family mob ties, and a Catholic education. Then there's Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, whose parents were in the John Birch Society. You can't get too much further right than that. Laura Loomer, who's Jewish, which is curious. And then there's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Several prominent female hosts on Fox News, lean conservative. Some notable examples are Laura Ingraham, Maria Bartiromo, Shannon Bream, and Harris Faulkner. These women are known for their far-right leaning perspectives and commentary on political and social issues. Another former Fox host, Megyn Kelly, has also been associated with right-wing media landscape. They all have made excellent, or they would have made excellent concentration camp managers and guards under the Hitler regime. As you've seen some of the photographs in the introduction to this podcast, just look at them and the photos of the women guards in the various camps. And these are just some of the women who have risen in the Nazi ranks of the present Fourth Reich, something we have never before experienced in American public and political life. Is there a compelling psychiatric structure or element involved here? Yes. Does it require a proper epidemiological study to better understand the origins of their enthusiastic endorsement of Trump-style fascism? Answer, yes. Going back to Reich, Reich does not say that all patriarchal families per se produce a fascist personality. Rather, he is describing the ideal type, which is the progenitor of it. Reich's work, entitled The Mass Psychology of Fascism, was developed during the 1933 period in Germany and published in 1933. The Nazis, of course, banned it. Part of the text of another of his works, Character Analysis, predate the publication of The Mass Psychology of Fascism and ended up being published almost simultaneously with the latter around 1933. Both books can be seen as the products of Reich's thinking from the mid-1920s until 1933. Further, both exhibit Reich's early debt to the writings of Freud. The former book is more closely tied to Reich's interpretation of Freud than the latter. Character analysis, very much clinically oriented, and itself does not directly connect any character type to the possession of an authoritarian personality and to amenability to the support of fascism. But it's an indicator. What we need to do is investigate this, because feminism that was about liberal ideas and ideals has dissipated, and these monster women have taken their place, and it is quite frightening. Thank you.